Hello, friends of the Gathering of the Miami Valley. Jeff Pinkleton here with you today, and excited to have two friends of mine who can go a lot of places with us today, so we're excited about this conversation, both pastors. And a couple gathering things to hit on real quick. We have our gathering worship time coming up this Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock on Springfield Jamestown Road, south of town, other side of 70 at Riversong Church. We'll be in a shelter house. We're excited. Typically, we have 9 or 10 churches that are involved in leadership with that. And these guys they've had a history of being tied to every one. And we'll have other churches and pastors and worship leaders and lay people involved with that. And then coming up on the Gathering podcast in coming weeks, our next one in 2 weeks, we have Jason Romano, author, podcaster, formerly of ESPN for 17 years, and my friend from Centerville, Pastor Tony Miltenberger. We all three have podcasts. We'll be talking about communication, platform, podcasts, and just the blessing it is to get to be a voice box for what God's doing. November 4th, a good friend and my tag team partner in men's ministry at Fellowship, Ray Willis, will be with me, and author, current speaker to much in culture, political, the Times, Stephen Mansfield, who was our breakfast speaker October 2012. And then November 18th, right before Thanksgiving, we'll have Bob Russell. I know Chad knows of Bob Russell, and I think Marty does too. Longtime pastor in Louisville at Southeast Christian, who has seen the transfer of leadership from him to Dave Stone and Kyle Eidelman, and great things going there. One of my former guys, Landon Wade, is now at church there, and I know anybody I know that goes down there loves what God's doing at Southeast. So now we get to talk to these two guys, friend for several years. When he moved to Springfield, Marty Dennis, who is the senior leader, senior director, tour guide at High Street Nazarene, and Chad Group, who's on staff there, one of the 3 head honchos, if you will, at Restoration Park Church. And anytime we get together, these guys have fun. The humor or attempts at humor go and follow us. So we're going to jump in and hear from these guys. So Chad, give us your 3-minute testimony, if you will, and tell us a little bit about yourself beyond that.
First off, what's attempt at humor mean? Are you
That's
saying
me. You guys are funny. I try to be funny.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Okay, because I thought he was kind of insulting us a little
No,
bit.
that was me.
So testimony, wow, and I got 3 minutes. That's going to be a challenge. But I'm not sure if you guys know my story at all. But I wasn't raised in the church. My mom and dad are still married, very moral people, good people. But when they got of age, 18, 19, they didn't want to go to church. My dad was Methodist, mom was Seventh-day Adventist. They thought the church was cold and lifeless. And so I didn't have church roots. So when I got, through high school, one of the moments in my life that was really pivotal was my grandpa was my neighbor. He was a World War II vet, was really my hero. And he actually died on me. I'm giving him CPR and, wow. and didn't come back. And, grandma's just screaming at me. I was 19. She was screaming at me to just save him, bring him back. It didn't work. It didn't work out. He had heart issues. And so at that point, life was pretty crazy for me. My longtime girlfriend, who is my wife now, we had broken up a month prior. Grandpa died on me. I didn't have the tools to deal with grief. So, going down a path of drinking and smoking marijuana was what happened. And my wife and I got back together, got married. That baggage was still there. I followed the American dream, at least as far as what the world wants to kind of package it, make money, be successful. So I got into business with my dad. We owned Domino's Pizza.
Did they give us any discount or anything by you mentioning him on here?
I don't know if they will or not anymore. My dad's out of it now. He sold the business actually last year. So.
And by the way, he's got at their lake house. They have you have a Domino's.
Oh,
what
yeah.
is that in there when you walk in?
It's the basement. It's all Domino's. All the old like signage, like
yeah.
menu and signage and like cool. Neon signs. So, I was.
Marty's jealous, by the way. I've seen it, and he hasn't. Get to Del Hollow, you'll see it.
So I was in business for myself. I was making the money. I was working 80 hours a week. 2 young kids, 2 boys. My wife, I orphaned my kids, orphaned my wife. Basically, she was a single mom growing up, and whereas I was doing business, just feeling empty inside. And so I really switched over to drinking, and I was drinking quite a bit. So I'd get off work, go to the bar, not see my family. And, there's infidelity in my relationship with my wife. Like I said, my wife was raised Catholic. She was very strong in her faith. She's always praying for me. And it got to a point in time where I sold the business, got into a different job, and then, wife had enough and she left. I came home from work for lunch and she took the kids and she left. And at that moment I realized, gosh, what's my life all about? I went to an AA meeting, and there's 14 guys and 3 or 4 ladies sitting around. They're all smiling. I'm just a mess. And the last guy, Pete Saller, I just remember what he said. He goes, "I hope you're miserable, because you can't be taught unless you're miserable." Mm-hmm. And then he said, "You didn't get in that car and drive here. God got you in that car and brought you here," and just opened my eyes to faith. Mm. People in my life that were people of faith. I got baptized that weekend, and I got baptized. I accepted Christ. I said, "I don't know what it means to follow Jesus, but I'm going to give you my life." And I didn't come to him because of salvation, going to heaven someday. It was that he met me in my mess. Mm-hmm. And
how many people need to hear that?
I know. He met me in my mess, and he didn't judge me and put me down. He actually is like, "I'm with you in this." Mm-hmm. And it just opened the doors, for me. And matter of fact, I was going back to school. I was a really good student. I was one of the tops of my class in high school, and I was going back to be a nurse. And what happened is people kept telling me, go into ministry. And my wife came back, during this time, like 5 months we were separated. She came back, and I kept asking my wife, "Well, should I go into ministry?" And she's like, "I don't want to be a pastor's wife." She's like, "Heck no, I don't want to do that." But then Randy really encouraged me to go back to school. Yeah, Randy Warner encouraged me. Pastor? Yes, and then Wes Arblaster said, "I don't say this to anybody, but you should go in ministry." And
your other tag team partner,
yes,
also pastor.
Yes, and so I went back to school, and my wife goes, I can't fight against what God wants to do in your life." And so I went back to school, got my bachelor's and master's in 4 years. And I mean, the rest is kind of history. It's just been an incredible journey. I see God's grace and mercy and in my life, and it helps me to see Jesus and other people, and how he works. So probably longer than 3 minutes. I apologize, but
and by the way, Marty said he wanted to go second so he could top what you had.
Oh yeah,
so
I got it.
Top it, Marty. Go.
I'll tell you, do I have a story? I was so bad as a preschooler. I used to break my crayons. It was just tough. And then God saved me at age 6. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. No, seriously, that was about the extent of my bad stuff, bad life. I'm here, and I told in a welcome time in one of the gathering luncheons, I told the story about why I'm a pastor today, because the mule died. My father had twin work mules, and this is a true story. Twin work mules. He worked 6 days a week in a steel mill. And on the 7th day, he took those twin work mules and as a hobby worked them. And he didn't have any other time to do it. So my mother and this dude named Richard Freeman, a man in the church who was a lover of God. I just loved him as a toddler. I wasn't even born yet, early 50s. They started praying for 2-3 weeks every day, crying out to God, whatever it takes to get Stanley Dennis, my father, saved. Mm-hmm. And, well, one morning, Sunday morning, he gets up to go work the mules, and one had died overnight. That kind of messed up his plans, and he didn't have an excuse anymore to fill his Sundays with something other than church, and he started going to church and was, within a short time, gloriously saved. From that, there's 6 of us children. Of course, I wasn't born. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and of course, Mom and Dad's favorite. But anyway,
by the way, every time I see a picture of you and your 3 brothers,
yeah,
I'm like, can you only imagine? I would love to be there.
It's bad. But anyway, no, it's awesome. But we just love Jesus, all 4 of us. Mm-hmm. The only one that could have been a pastor was a steel worker, Gary, and he's just got the heart of a shepherd. Pastors. Yeah. Served on district leadership boards throughout his life for 20, 30 years of his life. But Mike, Larry, and
Curly,
myself,
Mo.
yeah, we're all pastors, and anyway, got called in a ministry. I did not want to become a pastor. Yeah. I did not want to become a pastor. I watched what my 2 older brothers had to go through, and they went through a lot of crap.
Oh yeah.
Because people. Did you know people are involved in church? Did you
Messy
know that?
people.
And so am I.
We're involved.
My church is perfect until I walk in. But I didn't. And my brother, I talked to him, who was a district leader. He actually was an overseer of 144 churches in Florida. And I told him one day that I felt God was calling me to be a pastor. And I know we're getting into another question, but he said, if there's anything else you can do and still make it to heaven, I think you need to think about doing that.
Wow.
And long story short, I knew after I prayed and prayed and prayed and processed through that if I said no to this, it was a divine denial of God's will for my life. And it could have led to me being disobedient throughout my life. And I had to say yes. So that's my testimony.
Wow. Wow.
Crayons.
Now, I guess if both of you, when you go back, that's right. Crayola sponsors. We got Crayola, we got Domino's. To talk a little bit about your role now and kind of this season briefly, and then we have to talk to everybody about COVID. So, what are you most learning about either yourself and or God during COVID? So, talk a little bit about your role. We'll start with Marty this time and go to Chad. Let him try to trump you.
Yeah. COVID's been really eye-opening.
Yeah.
And Chad and I both agree, even though it's been messy, I think it's been a blessing. But my lowest time was not listening to my brothers like Chad and Randy and Mark Martin and Bill and other pastors.
Local pastors.
Who were recording their service and then broadcasting on Sunday. We were just live streaming. We loved the live, fresh connection with people and the unedited worship services. And Sunday morning, Easter Sunday, which we usually have the place packed out on Easter Sunday, live streaming didn't work. So there I was with 8 people on the platform, sound and media team, and myself. And I was just dying. An empty facility, just panning across an empty facility, thinking, what is the deal?
Yeah.
And I heard God say, Marty, I have this.
Yeah.
And midway through, by the preaching time, which is most important,
Especially your church.
Yeah, right. Yeah, with him, it's music. But preaching time, we were back on. But God really got my attention that I have to be dependent on him through this. And now, I'm telling you, God's hand is in my back. I'm excited about
You said
the
that
season.
several times lately.
I am.
Yeah.
Very thrilled about this season that we're living in.
Yeah.
And again, you're the senior pastor at High Street Nazarene, which is we're in downtown Springfield, about 2 miles out east of here.
Yep.
Yeah.
You came from Columbus. You've been in Springfield 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
So I've been stalking you for 5 years.
You have.
Back to when I stalked you at Panera, and we met that time.
Right.
Me doing my homework and research.
Yeah.
So Chad, tell a little bit about your role and your kind of assignment right now. And then what are you learning about yourself and or God during this COVID period?
Yeah, I'm one of the lead pastors. We have a different structure than a lot of churches do. We have a kind of call it a 3-headed monster. We have 3 lead pastors, and we each have a specific role in that. And it's actually been wonderful because, we each preach about, 15 times a year. So you have some breaks. So you have time to really kind of spend more time and study. And you have a fresh perspective coming up there and doing that. And
So your messages are a lot deeper.
yes, they're more thought out. You have a chance to kind of really go into that a little bit and not feel the pressure. Done on Sunday and then Monday. Thinking about next Sunday. We have that ability. My role specifically is more in development. So I kind of run the organization at Restoration Park Church. So I oversee the staff. Develop ministries and whatnot. And so I really, my business backgrounds, I really love pouring into people.
That's where you guys are very entrepreneurial as a church.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
not that others aren't, but
Yeah.
you guys really have it from Mark to.
Oh yeah. We average about 16, 18 grand a month in income from our property. That's not focused on the church. And we have 70 acres. We have 3 buildings, so it's an opportunity for us. God's given this to us. How would we be good stewards of that? And so, we're always looking for new opportunities, to do that. And so, my role is mostly just more development. Like I said, overseeing the whole staff in the church in that kind of way. And COVID has been at first. To be honest with you, I struggled the first few weeks because when we shut down the church, like we all did, this is 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into 2.5 months, and then reopening the church. We thought, okay, we get through June, we'll get back to normal again, and then it just hit again and again. And so the first couple of weeks, I struggled with this because I was so enmeshed in people's lives. And as a pastor, you're in programming and developing what's next for the church, the corporate church. But after a few weeks, a month, God really kind of said, I can work in programs, but that's not where I really thrive,
What's long-term planning for you now?
Well, it's like just next season almost, which is hard because we're usually a year out in planning,
Like Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, we usually have Christmas done, back in like Easter time, and we're just now talking about, Christmas right now, actually. So it's been hard, but what God has really done for me in all this is just my dependence upon Him. Why I became a pastor in the first place, back to my testimony, was I don't know what it means to follow you at the time, but I know you love me and you meet me in my mess, and I know what it means when I follow you. You're my first love, and going back to the first love. My faith in Him is so important, and it's really been awesome to see that kind of be cultivated a bit more. And my ministry's changed. I still develop. We're still planning a little bit, but my ministry now is just, it's more impactful. It's more one-on-one. It's discipleship.
So you're probably more excited about that job description thanks to COVID than the one you had before.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not worried about the masses on Sunday morning as much as I am the people that come into my life. And so my ministry, I think, is more effective in some ways. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah. How is the gathering kind of transitioning to this thing, the gathering? How has the gathering, in whatever way you've been connected, served you well, stoked the fire in you, served you as a pastor well?
What's the gathering?
Yeah, well, tell us what the gathering.
We connect men to men to God. We go into my motorist thing. We'll start with you, Chad.
I'm just teasing. Yeah, you know what? For me, I'm in Thursday morning every other week at New Carlisle. We meet at Penny Lane, and there are guys that don't go to Restoration Park Church, which is actually really great. A lot of business guys, that are local. And as a pastor, it's been wonderful because I don't have to come in with content. Sometimes when you're coming as a pastor, you're talking about theology and spiritual issues, and they lean on you to have the answers. And I just go in there and I don't talk near as much, and I just listen, and it's been wonderful. It's just hearing their stories and chiming in every once in a while. But for me, it's been wonderful as a pastor, just to go in and connect with other guys.
Yeah. What about the worship? Because you've been obviously key in the worship thing and hosted a night out there. How's that been just in our framework of being an umbrella with churches? How's that been a win or whatever?
The biggest win for me, and this is probably not what you're looking for the answer on this, the biggest win is how you connected me with other pastors in the Springfield area. That has been the huge win for me. I mean, I got to meet Marty, I met Marty, Joey Brown.
You got to meet me.
Yeah,
that's
finally.
That's what I say too.
Drew McClary, Ray Willis, all these wonderful, men who are just dedicated for the kingdom. I met them through the worship venue that we do. And the worship night's wonderful. It's good to get together and have a sole purpose of just worshiping Jesus. But for me, the biggest one, the residual effect of that has been my connection with other pastors in the area.
It's interesting, especially for people who might watch this, who are not from the area, from out of state, from wherever they are. Every community would have something probably like this where wherever you live, you think of that being your place where you work, stay, hang out, do whatever. And then there's these other communities that are offsets of that that maybe you're not as connected to. And it's so easy. We've talked about this. Randy and I have talked about this, that New Carlisle Medway can kind of get pushed aside from Dayton people, from Springfield. And there's so much gold out there. I mean, when I went and visited your locker room at Penny Lane, which is a local coffee shop, artistic place in New Carlisle, I just love, like, anybody that walks in there, they know one of you guys, if not all of you. On either end, the cool. Girls who work there, they know you guys. You guys do a lot of life through Rotary, through FYI, through your churches. And most groups don't have it like that. And I just think, man, when we've talked about Revive Ohio coming to Springfield, I'm like, we got to figure out where New Carlisle and Medway fits, because it needs to fit. Now there's other layers that open up because you can't focus on those two churches alone.
Sure.
But you guys have gold out there that everybody else needs to know about. Marty, talk about your connection with the gathering beyond, obviously Thursday at lunch in your locker room is a big part of it, but there's other things in other ways.
Well, we meet on Thursday with the best locker room. That's what we call it, best locker room group. And it's just good guys. And I
You're so humble.
For the same reasons that you do. I love to connect with men that I'm not pastoring and shepherding.
Yeah, it's so nice.
And to sit down and not being in charge, which sometimes it ends up being that way because I don't know how to stop talking.
I know.
but so I'm sorry.
I know.
But yeah, but it's just fun to have other people in charge, other people giving direction, and me getting to be one of the guys. It's an important thing. I love to connect with men that I don't have to be a pastor to. But when I say that, I think when you and I are called to this area, we're called to pastor the area.
Yeah.
So I'm not just a pastor of people that happen to show up at High Street or tune in online. I am a pastor to Springfield, and I get to do that with people like you.
Absolutely.
You're so much more cool than your partners, by the way, than Randy.
But don't you feel like at times it plays well to where the pastor's at even there, and other times you don't want to have it on?
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. But I'm in that locker room group. You sat me down along with another pastor and talked to us about younger men. And I started we've jokingly, and it's kind of stuck, called it Younger Guns, because these are young single guys between 18 and 35.
You're in that group?
That I'm the only old dude there. And
He's got older guns.
Oh, yeah. Who knows why they get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and meet me now at Cohatch at 8 a.m. on Saturday mornings. And we've had up to around 12 guys.
I had a huge one at one time I was there. The weather was kind of funky out too.
Yeah, and we just talk about life. We do talk about sexual purity. We talk about the need to be biblically set and focused on how we live as young Christian men and how they live as young Christian men, me and Old Dog. That I do that with together. I've really enjoyed your lunch series, your of course the special breakfast with
that we haven't been able to have.
Huh?
That we haven't been able to have.
Yeah, but what I really love is men getting together and fleshing life out together, and it helps you understand that you're not alone in the city. There's so many guys. I just was sharing with a pastor of a large church in Lima Community Church. I was just sharing with him how special it was to be able to connect with men in our city, so many guys, and know that we have something in common as Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Well, and I think with that, what's great, at least for me, thinking about guys like you guys and other pastors that have been involved is, it's a sacrifice. I mean, you're giving up something by being connected. I mean, I obviously love it personally, relationship with both of you and other guys that I get to have extended periods of time with you that would not be there if you guys didn't jump into what we're doing. But, where hopefully community and thinking beyond your four walls is expanded. Guys, we have about 180 guys regularly involved. They get to see pastors in a different light than maybe what they thought they were. And I just know in both those cases, guys just love you guys. I mean, they love, you've had a number of guys in that group who I think on the side get to think of you as their pastor. One of the guys has a 19-year-old son. He's super excited about getting him connected to younger guys. That's fun to think about. So let me.
I do want to say this: you are a connector. You have
Absolutely.
gifts to connect people with people.
Yeah.
And the gathering is a perfect fit for you because you really have caused the gathering to evolve. Of course, you and Jesus, but I appreciate how you are always your wheels are always turning when you're sitting down with someone. I've watched you do this 100 times probably in the last 5 years. You need to connect with so and so. You've done that with me. You connected me with Jeremy. Of course, that went flat. You know Jeremy.
So about Jeremy Hudson, my good friend, your good friend,
awesome,
pastor
awesome
at Fellowship.
But we sat down because you made that connection for us, and I got to know a very precious brother.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your leadership.
I wish we all understood, and not that everybody's wired like I am that way, but it's crazy. I told you about a connection when we got here about a national guy getting connected potentially to a local guy, all because somebody connected me to the national guy's wife, because her and I have a similar passion for fathering daughters. And it's just crazy how that kind of stuff works. Ron Edmondson, who I'm a fan of, and some gathering guys have gotten to meet him. He used to be at Emmanuel Baptist Church in Lexington, led Leadership Network. He's now an interim at a church in Clarksville, Tennessee. And he wrote an article I just posted today about the value and why he likes to make connections. I today had a chance to connect. I ran into a guy I know from Xenia in North Dayton. Neither one of us are where we're supposed to be. Through talking to him, it made me think of these two guys that need to meet. One of those two guys who I got connected to by somebody else, the guy that connected me to one of them, they were meeting together today. And I said, "Oh, did you see that note? You two need to." And it was just crazy. I'll sometimes have that happen where I'll walk into one place and hear a couple guys connected that I either made the connection or just, I mean, there's such great value. Part of it is just I realize what I don't offer and what everybody else can offer, and let's build the bridge on that. So transitioning is something a little bit more difficult. So we use the expression a lot, life is just hard. Times are tough, life is hard. I'm sure you've said that. You've said that to people within your church, maybe within the locker room, that conversations come up, whatever. What do you think that phrase, life is just hard, means? And how has that been magnified in the last 6 to 9 months? Do you think, whether that's for you, whether that's people in your sphere of influence, your family, life is hard? Marty, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah.
You want the tough questions.
You know, I'm just trying to think, what would the first thing be that I think of when I think of life is hard? I think dealing with people is very challenging. I love the challenge, but it's hard when you can't get in alignment with their way of thinking. And as a pastor, when you have hundreds of people that you are trying to be in line with, and you can't be around a lot of those people because of COVID-19, the last 6 to 9 months has been challenging. You think, this is the back of the mind, because we love people. Are they still with us, or are they not?
I know.
Who do I connect with? You know, relationally, how do I do this in a different way? And so in the flesh, life is hard. Life, it doesn't make sense. Here, we're a pastor. We're pastors, and we want to connect with people because we love people and we want to invest in people, and we have to learn how to do it at a distance.
Yeah.
It makes it hard. Of course, when you add, but God is good, it changes everything. But life gets hard when you go home at night and you think, I've done this and I should have done this. Life is hard because there's always pressure on you to think that you should have done more.
Yeah.
I can tell you were going there.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's good stuff. I might have a different approach. I would say, you know, life is obviously hard. There's calamities, sickness, and loss of jobs, and, you know, the things that happen in life, you know, but
Parenting teenagers.
oh my gosh, yes, and they get more expensive as they get older.
I was just talking to someone about that today.
I got 2 college boys, and it doesn't stop there. You know, I would probably say the term is faith is hard. You know, walking by faith is hard. You know, there's a scripture that I think sometimes
so much smarter than me. You know?
no, not at all.
Looks right.
But you know, it's Matthew 7:13 and 14 about the narrow gate and the wide gates.
Yes.
You know, and I think sometimes we translate that to be about heaven and hell. But I don't think Jesus is talking about that at all. I think he's talking about the wide gate is easy. It's living by the world. It's living in the world and letting the world impact you. The narrow gate, if you find it, there's life, and the life that you find is Jesus Christ. And that life is peace and comfort and joy, and it's hard to live in that. If I'm going to be honest, walking by faith on a daily basis that way to just lose myself in his life, that's really hard to do. You know, because I'm pulled by all these distractions the world throws, and my kids, my wife, and there's so many things pulling at me. That walking by faith, that narrow gate, is really hard. So when it comes to like life, all the circumstances of life, and then you throw in faith on top of that, it's really hard, you know, to find that narrow gate.
I love the different perspectives you guys have come at that with. So on the same line, you know, we have a VP candidate and incumbent debate tonight. There was one last week you guys might have seen. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So there's political, social issue, all kinds of crazy times going on. We see the negativity. You don't have to be on social media long at all to see it. We're called to represent Jesus, be image bearers, represent him well, be countercultural. What would you say to people who listen to this as far as, like, what does it look like to really... Like, what do they need to know above all? It's like, if you're going to do nothing else well, whether it's in personal conversations, family meals, social media, what do we need to do well as people who know and follow Jesus? We'll start with you, Chad.
Man, I tell you, you know, the enemy does his greatest work in our minds. You know, we can look at the distractions, but it starts in our mind. That's why, you know, Paul talks about this. Take all your thoughts captive, make them obedient to Christ. Like the enemy puts these things in your head. Not all of them are for God, if we're going to be honest. Our thoughts that come through our heads, some are bad, some are diabolical. And then you throw all the noise, you know, all the negativity, and our minds just go all over the place. And we just have a hard time, you know, processing our thoughts because it's high emotionalism. And, you know, it's bad advice to say follow your heart. which is, your feelings. And feelings aren't right or wrong, they just are, but they can be very dangerous because they're not always accurate on what's the truth of the situation. So, for me, it's like quieting your mind, turning off the social media, the news. There's things that give us anxiety, that give us stress, that make us angry. Well, we need to unplug from that. Not completely. You need to unplug and spend that time quieting yourself and allowing you to take those thoughts captive, because not every thought comes from the Father, but taking that captive, and when you take a deep breath and do that, it changes your perspective on what's going on, because it's so easy to go down that emotional bunny trail with people.
One of the best pieces of advice I've seen and heard many people say this, and Marty can relate to this based on my text I sent last week to him and a few guys, but you hear people say sometimes, like, that email you want to send, that text you want to send, that note where you want to get fired up, type it, but don't send it. Or put it in a draft file if it's an email or whatever. And I love what you said there, Chad, because I was just saying to someone this morning in our locker room group, these are small groups we have for guys to get connected on a bi-weekly basis. I said, one of the passages of scripture that means more to me all the time is Mark 1:35. Very early in the morning, Jesus got up, went off to a solitary place to pray. He was God. Fully God, as if not human, vice versa. And yet he knew to get up, get away. And I love what you're saying there, because I think we got to do that. We got to shut it down. We got to turn it off. You got to, and I just think that's so needed. So Marty, what would you say about speaking to people that challenge and encourage?
Isn't it so unbelievable that we can say all that we want, we've got to make it about Jesus. But both sides of the aisle say they're following Jesus, So I'm not going to debate donkeys and elephants. I'm not going to go there. When I sit down, the most important thing I do in my day is sit down at my kitchen table with my son and my wife. And I need to teach him not to make it about emotions and not to get angry because someone thinks differently than me. If we teach him correctly, he will not be racist. He will have a mind to think on his own, and he'll be able to cut through other people's opinions and make choices that are right. It's all about me not blowing up at the table because somebody politically doesn't think the same way I do, right?
I mean, have you seen, Trump got COVID? And I don't know if you've
Really?
seen, but you've seen some of the posts. I'm so glad he's got COVID and all this. And people saying, well, I'm not going to pray for him. I was like,
well, a non-Christian can say that.
Yes, but I'm seeing this in the Christian communities where it's like, well, I'm not, and it's like this. It's like every person we come in contact with is created in the image of Christ.
Right.
And so Jesus says, bless your enemies, don't curse your enemies, pray for your enemies. If Trump's your enemy, you need to be praying for him. If he, what I'm saying? Like, so people have a hard time making that connection, during this time. I'm not praying for that person because he believes this way.
Well, I think bottom line is, like you said, I was seeing Casting Crowns the other night. Everything for them, and Mark Hall, their lead singer, goes back to Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And when you said it, you said that a minute ago, something to that effect, Marty, and it just stuck in my heart. Like, we got to always drive it back to Jesus. So transitioning back to being about you guys personally, what do you wish people knew about you as a pastor? Like, what is something that's maybe a misunderstanding or they don't know that you wish they knew about you as a pastor? Keep that about 30-second answer, maybe.
Man, I don't know how to answer that one.
The first thoughts is
You break crayons.
No, I don't anymore. I gave
Shoes
that
on
up when I got saved. I think I just need to be really who I am, and they will get it. I don't think I need to wish that they knew something about me. I want them to know how much I care. I want them to know it's not about some number game with me as a pastor. I want them to know that I really, truly care about their life and their world, their crises that they're in. Right now, I want them to know how painful it is during COVID, because you and I are people persons, and I love to connect with people. I've only been into the regional hospital once, and that was because someone was dying, and they let me in. And I've had a craniotomy that I couldn't be a part of. I've had stents put in today that I couldn't be a part of. I've had knee replacement surgery this morning I couldn't be a part of. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And maybe I would like for people to be reminded that our hearts are aching because we can't do what we're called to do.
That's good.
So you're with them and you love them and you want that more than they know. Chad, what about you? How would you?
Man, that's a
give
hard
quick answer to
question.
that?
Hard question to answer, but I always say that the best way I can lead a church is focus on my own faith.
Yeah.
And that's and I really take my own faith pretty serious. Like I don't take myself very serious at all, but I take my faith pretty serious. And I think sometimes people look at pastors and go, "Well, their job's just on Sunday morning." And
Never has anybody said that.
people who are just bystanders, kind of looking from the outside in. And so, pastors, we go through a lot. There's a lot of. I mean, it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's not punch the clock at 5 o'clock and get home. It's first and foremost, what's most important for my church is that I focus on my faith, my relationship with Jesus Christ. And if I don't do that well,
So would part of that be
nothing
you
else.
want them to help fight and protect you in your
that'd-
own relationship with
that'd be,
Jesus?
That'd be yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, this will be shared on the Restoration Online platform since you guys have been
Nice.
gracious and let me do that. So
Nice.
some of your people will hear about that. That's good to hear. So,
Nice.
so one of your boys, I know they're different ages, and you got 2 generations worth, Marty. One of your boys comes to you and says, "Dad, I'm called to be a pastor." What do you say to him?
Heck no. That's just fun. It's been the hardest job I've ever had. I owned a business for 10 years, and there's a lot of stress and pressures of making things work. I did everything in the business. And when it comes to church, it is the hardest job because people are full of sin and they just all their mess, and you're also sinful and all that mess, but at the end of the day it's the most rewarding job I've ever done, because at the end of the day it's not about me at all. I'm just a vehicle that God's able to use in some small tiny way for his kingdom. And so it is a job that it's not about the money, it's not about prestige or status, it's just all about the kingdom. And if you have that kind of heart for it, I mean, that's where it has to be. People say, "I want to be in ministry. I want to work at the church." It's like, I don't think you do. Yeah, for me, it's if you really have a passion for the kingdom.
I've said it's a little bit like Tom and Jerry. Like when Tom and Jerry, and like Tom would have Jerry cornered, and like, I got you. Like
Compared it
God's
to being a
I think God's kind of like, I'm going to get you. But I think, like you said, the rewarding thing. So, Marty, what's your answer to that? It doesn't have to be the
sit
same by any
down.
means.
My oldest son, I would cry and weep and rejoice because he's not where he should be spiritually.
Yeah.
He's not a follower of Jesus Christ. He knows there's a God, but he's walked away from it. My youngest son, I would really, because he's 13. My oldest son is 31.
Okay.
He lives in Oregon. I have a young son who's 13 who still thinks I'm cool. And he still listens to me, and he loves me, and we do devotions at bedtime together, and I get to see his heart growing. If he would come to me, I would still say the exact same thing that my brother said to me. If there's anything else you can do and still know that you're going to make it to heaven, you need to consider that, because I don't want him to go through the pain that we go through, Chad.
Bumps and bruises.
But if it happens, I will rejoice.
Absolutely.
And I will pray.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to not think anybody wouldn't have those same kind of answers, like the blessing, the good thing, and yet how tough it is, and you're not getting rich from it. None of us are in a lap of luxury here or whatever. But I think that dichotomy. I think it's too easy to say one
I've
extreme
seen
or another.
Chad's W-2.
But there's a real dichotomous thing there.
It's hard because you don't want to be so negative about the church, because God's plan is to use sinful, flawed people to be the herald of the good news.
If there weren't sinful, flawed people, we wouldn't have a job.
I know.
Well, let me ask you guys a shepherding thing here. So for people who will check this out and be a part of this conversation with us, if you could encourage them from your own life and speak truth into someone else's life, what does thriving and hitting on all cylinders look like in your life? And I'm not going to frame it any tighter than that. Chad, when you're thriving, what does that look like? And Marty, that'll come to you next.
Man, I was telling Marty, before we did the podcast, that personally, spiritually, I'm in such a wonderful place, and it's been contentment, and it's content because I've been forced to let go of some of the things that I found a lot of fulfillment in, pouring into people, seeing people. And, it's really forced me to really nestle into my own faith and my relationship to Jesus Christ. And through that, there's been conviction, and there's been that kind of the blind spots that we all have, the sinful spots that we kind of push to the side. And so when I'm thriving, man, it really starts with me in the morning, just getting up and praying and being in his presence. And then from that, my ministry has really blossomed in the sense that I have deeper, intimate relationships with people in our church that I would not have had if I was just doing programs. And, hard stuff. I mean, what COVID has done for our churches is that people who have been in difficult situations or some kind of, shaky situations, it is exasperated with COVID.
Oh, sure.
And so there's been a lot more counseling, a lot more crises care. And I got to tell you, when I'm in someone's crises, that's the holy of holies. And I've been in a lot
That's an
more
interesting
of
way
that.
to say that, yeah.
Get to be in the middle of that.
Yes.
Especially when they are willing to process and listen.
Yes. It's,
Some people,
it's the holy of holies in my mind.
Some people just celebrate another problem.
Yeah.
Man, that is an interesting thought. I haven't thought about it quite like you just said that.
Yeah,
Holy, holies, yeah.
Oh,
Because God is there, and you're seeing a person completely broken, and that's where God does His greatest work. It's in our weakness where His strength is, made manifest. And so for me, it's like I get to witness God's work at His greatest point. So.
It's interesting. I want to share this. So if people saw this, we had a podcast probably about 2 months ago, where we had two of my former board members who have moved out of the area. And it was kind of a last second. We had to switch because the podcast we had planned didn't work out. So we had to switch to a plan B. And I thought, okay, if I could do something with guys I know I can connect with, what's the plan B? And I thought of these two guys. And from that podcast, we've decided to do an every other Wednesday, 6 a.m. to 6:45 phone call. And one of the guys came up with 4 questions we're asking each other. And we had our first call today. And it was so good, and it kind of was funny. Seth and Eric will appreciate this. It was kind of like the podcast where there was just a great energy and momentum, and we're playing that into a phone call we're doing every 2 weeks. And the one guy said today, he's like, man, I've got some good connections here, but that call was more significant than probably things I've got going on here. And, I got a chance to kind of plead a little bit with those guys and be honest and vulnerable about some things.
Yeah.
And let me ask you guys this. So what do you see yourself? Oh, wait, we didn't get to answer you.
It's okay.
Sorry, Mark, I need to hear
No,
your
it's
answer.
all right.
When you're thriving, hitting on all cylinders, what does that look like?
It's all this commitment to be in alignment with my faith and trusting God. I can trust Him. He's proven it. And all of a sudden it snowballs Him, and you see new, more exciting things taking place, all because it's not me. I'm not doing anything. I'm trusting God. He's given me words. It's amazing the words that come out of your mouth when you're truly in alignment with God and His will and His purpose. The Holy Spirit can speak through us. Have you ever had, when you were preaching, an out-of-body experience? This is weird, but it's almost like...
What?
It's almost, yeah, really. It's almost like when you get off the script and you're sharing from the depths of your soul, and it's almost like you can look at yourself thinking, where are these words coming from while you're speaking? And when I'm there, I just feel like it's a thriving time. Study becomes so much easier. It's all about that faith commitment with God. My marriage is always better when my faith commitment to Jesus is
So
good.
I have a question. I wonder, for me, like the agendas are off the table. Like,
Right.
When I had to go to work Monday through Thursday, Friday, and you're doing these different things, there's an agenda. With COVID, the agenda's kind of been a lot more fluid. And in that, I'm almost requiring God to open up those divine appointments. And that's what's been so wonderful about it.
Well, and that's been one of the beauties, I think, specifically about the race thing. I don't know about you guys, but when I've sat around people who don't look like me, don't come from my background, my experience, or vice versa, you just kind of drop it, and you're just like, okay, let's just go. Tell me how you're feeling, what's your story. And I had a situation recently, 2 different ones. One with a guy who I've developed a relationship with who's black, who, when I asked him how he's doing during his time, he said, he just told me about the people he works with, and he said something about how nobody he worked with, while they have a great team, nobody had asked him that question. I was with a person in a medical facility recently going to get an appointment, and she was a young woman, and I said, so hey, how are you handling this? Like, she's either fresh out of school or still doing that kind of stuff. She said, I said, I'm assuming other people have asked you how you're doing as a patient, or just, she goes, no, you're the only one. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like, not saying, thinking enough to care for that person you're across from. You know, somebody once said, and I love this quote, the most important person in your life or your world is the person across from you, whoever you're with. And I just think that's a great way to look at things. So last question, I love to ask this question to people, whether it's the last one or not. I stole it from Bob Goff. We've read it, a couple of his books in our locker room. Author, dreamer, big voice, all that Bob Goff is. And he says, what are you becoming in the next year? I know for me, whenever I think about that, and I've thought a lot about that question, I think God's really trying to impress upon me gentleness. I wrote up a little thing today for our buddy Mo Carpenter. And one of the things I said about Mo is he is gentle.
He is.
I want to be gentle. I'm not there. God's working it in and through me, and it's probably slower in his mind than he wants it to be, but I want to become gentle. I want that to be, people look at me and they say, Jeff is gentle. What are you becoming? What is God trying to work out and work through you? Marty, what's your answer to that?
Well, the gentle is one of 9 things.
Those things are called the fruit of the Spirit, probably.
Yeah, the fruit of the Spirit. And if you really put a check mark every day to those, that is all. If you're living out those 9 things, there's no judgment against you. You read the verses ahead of that in Galatians 5. Wow, you think I'm not going to make it because I'm some of that, you know?
Bad list.
And then you surrender yourself. Oh, I'm having trouble with patience today, God. I hate it when people say, don't pray for patience. You pray for patience.
Absolutely.
God will bless you with it. Well, I can get preachy with that, but you get all of those things. Self-control. 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 If you can surrender that to God in your day,
Yeah.
how things change. So,
Wow. Chad, what about you? What are you becoming in the next year?
It's a hard thing to say because you say it doesn't actually stick. But humility has been something that God's been speaking to me.
yes.
And matter of fact, the verse I hear all the time it's in John 13. It's wash feet. Like we're called to wash feet. We're called to take up the towel and wash feet. Jesus washed the feet of Judas Iscariot. You know,
Amazing.
and he goes, "Do as I've done." And I'm gonna be honest with you. First off, feet disgust me, and second of all, I don't want to wash.
My wife says the same thing about mine when we lay in bed.
I hate feet. Oh, but second part, I don't want to wash feet of someone I don't like, and yet, or someone who might betray me. And it's like it's positioning, being humble enough to recognize that first and foremost, mercy doesn't end with me. Mercy begins with me.
Man, you guys are just dropping them left and right.
That I just need to be that kind. I mean, that's where I want to be.
That's good.
You know, I don't want to be there in my flesh. You know what I'm saying? If I'm gonna be honest with you, but he's been giving me that verse. You know, like I said, I think it's humility. It's just wash feet, and that's what he's been telling me. So,
Any final like simple soundbite type quote that you would want to encourage people with as far as this time, where you are, bunkering down, going forward with Jesus? Any final word before I close this up here, Marty?
Yeah. Of course, you've read Batterson's books, Circle Maker and Draw the Circle. There's been a lot of us in small groups, and there'll be about 50 meeting with me tonight in a small group. Kind of not
50's
so
a small group.
that's it.
We sit around tables. We set up our worship center like a dining area, and we have around 50 people show. And we're talking tonight about the ripple effect. Negative or positive, every decision I make will affect generations.
No doubt.
And I'm just so moved to strive to make a difference. And I challenge everyone listening or watching this, make good choices that will cause a ripple effect, that will bring huge, huge things to be.
Yeah.
Chad, how about you?
Man, that's good. That's good, Marty. I would just encourage people during this time to just quiet themselves down, make some space, find some alone time every single day. Like fight for it. And I would say do it first thing in the morning because it helps your whole day have a better perspective. Turn off social media, stop engaging people who don't think like you, and pray for them. But just get to a place where you can really position yourself to allow the Holy Spirit to do his work in you. You know,
That's good.
it's hard. It's hard to do that because we're get caught up in everything.
How
but
about you?
yeah.
You're asking me my question back. You know, I was going to close with that. I just think, you know, to people watching, listening, sitting in on our conversation, I mean, I just think guys that have thrived, and I've been I think we talked about that earlier about where I feel like I thrived, and I did for probably 6 to 8 weeks, and then some realities hit and things got harder, and I've said to a number of people, like, the highs have been really high, the lows have been really low, and that's kind of been a continual thing. But I'm like, the people that I see that have thrived at all, and certainly have thrived throughout, and I think you guys fit into that category, have really leaned in and taken care of their personal faith, their personal time with Jesus, their personal relationship with God very seriously. I think we got to continue to do that. And then I just want to encourage people who listen to this, thinking about wherever they are with the gathering, not with the gathering, living out of town, living out of state, and they need something. The people you're going to do life with one-on-one are vital. Our group today, before that Eric's a part of, before we got started, we split up and everybody was meeting in pairs today, and you could just see the life in those pairs. None of them had spent time together one-on-one before that day, but they had a relationship and then they leaned in. And then when you're with a group of people, the multiplier effect of, like, things you've said, Chad, that Marty and I both were like, oh, wow, yes. Things you said that we were both like, yes. And I just think, who are you going to do life with one-on-one? Is that small? I just heard someone say yesterday, they were talking about Dallas Willard right before he died. Somebody said, what would you do different if you did life over again? And he acknowledged, of all people, that he had regrets, which blew my mind. Dallas Willard, author, pastor, leading Christian thinker in the 20th century. And he said, I would have spent time with less people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of resonated with me too. Like, I can't be friends with everybody, but who can I go deep with? So,
Jeff, if I can just real quick, your faith is molded and shaped by the people that you have in your life, and it's God's Spirit working. But like, being around you guys blesses me. I get to see Jesus in you, and that's the encouraging part. So that's why relationships are so important. Right. And sometimes those ones where a friend of mine, his wife is from Germany, and she goes, you Americans are so superficial. You ask how you're doing all the time, but you don't really mean it. Wow. Just kind of going, with that thought. And it's like, my faith has been benefited and has been encouraged by people like you in my life, seeing how you live your life out, And so I just echo that, man. I mean, that's how our faith grows. It's not just reading scripture and prayer. Those are necessary things. But it's just watching Christ work in other people around you, man. It's so powerful.
I'm going to close with that from our friend Dana Akers, who on Facebook, Dana Akers, we love you, is saying Chad and Marty bringing the heat, the fire, the love, all. So
Jesus
Dana,
incarnate right there.
That's right. That's real. He is. So we're closing out. Please join us in 2 weeks, and love you guys being a part of this. Thanks, Marty.
Thanks.
Chad.